What's up, guys? You are watching Fight Feed. I'm going to be giving you my quick hitting recap for UFC 317. So on my screen, I've got the main card pulled up. We're going to go through each fight on the card, but this is going to be a very fast hitting recap for you guys, trying to make this happen in under 10 minutes. Let's see what we can do. First off, the final event in the main event of the evening for UFC 317, we've got Ilia Topuria defeating Charles Oliveira by a brutal round one knockout. Ilia Topuria silenced so many of the doubters with this powerful and brutal round one KO. There were a lot of people that thought Ilia was going to win. I don't know if anyone could have anticipated it ending in the way that he was able to pull this together. The power, timing, composure was just flawless from Ilia Topuria. He's a true champion and made a true statement win against Charles Oliveira. This now has him on one of the best 3 KO streaks in UFC history, knocking out the likes of Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and now Charles Oliveira. Like, look back at what Charles was able to accomplish at lightweight. He's really the only fighter to give Islam a true test or challenge in the championship bouts outside of Volkanovski. So if you really boil this down, I mean, Oliveira took out the likes of Gaethje, Michael Chandler 2 times, Dustin Poirier. So look at some of these legends that Oliveira's dispatched of, and now look at what Ilia was able to do to him in just one round. It's fantastic, and he's an absolute superstar. It's going to be so fun to see where Ilia goes from here. So with that, we're going to jump down into the next fight, which is the co-main event of the card, which was another legendary bout between Alexandre Pantoja and Kai Kara-France. So just taking a look at this fight, obviously Pantoja defeats Kai Kara-France with a submission in round 3. Pantoja weathered that early storm from Kai Kara-France in terms of the striking. I think a lot of people thought Kai Kara-France would have a lot more success on the feet, but I wouldn't even say he necessarily weathered a storm because, in my opinion, Pantoja kind of was owning in a lot of these striking exchanges that ultimately led to some of these takedowns and getting Kai Kara-France in an area where he's not necessarily comfortable on the ground, ultimately able to snatch up a rear naked choke in round 3 and dispatch of Kai Kara-France. Pantoja should be absolutely higher on that pound for pound list. He should also be considered one of the greatest champions we've seen. If you look back at flyweight, guys, before Pantoja secured that belt from Moreno in a split decision win, that belt was being passed hands almost every fight because you had Moreno who won. Then Moreno lost in the rematch against Figueiredo. Now it might be a bit contested, but Figueiredo reattains that belt. Moreno goes back out, gets the belt off Figueiredo again. Moreno then goes and defends the belt against Pantoja. Pantoja secures the belt. Pantoja is the only flyweight champion in recent history to actually have several defenses in this weight class. I believe that is his 4th. So he is a rising star, just continuing to show that his skill just gets better and better even as he ages. At 35 years old and 125, he is doing things that people probably could never have expected. So an amazing win from Alexandre Pantoja. And that leads in perfectly to the next fight on the card, Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval, because now we have the new contender at flyweight against Pantoja, which will be Joshua Van. So taking a look at this fight, Joshua Van defeats Brandon Royval by unanimous decision. And really looking at this fight, Van just showed maturity beyond his years. He's only 23 years old, but he outworked Royval with his clean striking and his timing, and just able to land the shots where it mattered most, especially I think when you look at round 3, his mixing in of those lead leg stomps as Royval advances was a huge IQ moment for Joshua Van. And I believe that also set up his ability to land that almost KO shot on Royval in the last, 30 or I think it was like 30 to 20 seconds of the fight. He lands that overhand that drops Royval to the ground. Ultimately, this fight was an absolute scrap. It sucks for Royval because he was the number 1 contender, but Royval is being paid his show and win money plus the bonus money, and Joshua Van obviously is getting the same. Those guys are getting taken care of according to Dana White. An amazing fight, though. I believe this broke several records. I know there is a record that it broke in terms of the amount of flyweight strikes thrown in a men's flyweight fight. They beat that for significant strikes. They are number 3 now in most significant strikes in the UFC, in a UFC fight. So there's 2 fights ahead of it. Don't know what they are, but needless to say, I think this fight most people thought could be fight of the night. I know Brandon Royval and Joshua Van were pushing for it, and they were able to achieve it. So shout out to them. Next fight on the card, we have Beneil Dariush versus Manny Moicano. Now, this is a Beneil Dariush defeats Renato Moicano by unanimous decision. I actually chose Moicano in this fight. But really what I would say about this is that just Dariush was able to bounce back with that gritty win. He mixed in the pressure and the wrestling to control Moicano. And, across 3 rounds, it wasn't the most flashy of a performance. I just think he showed a bit more of a veteran type status, was able to land some of those body kicks that were open pretty much all fight against Moicano, and just also able to claim ownership of those wrestling exchanges and also just be the more active fighter on the feet. Now, Moicano had success. He did drop Dariush in round 1, which definitely clinched him round 1. But if you look at rounds 2 and 3, Dariush was able to kind of weather that storm and ultimately take control of the fight and get the win. Pretty cool win for him, but I just don't know what it does really for them in terms of this division. They're both 36 years old, and they're kind of at the tail end of the division, number 9 and number 10. And so in this fight, I think Beneil Dariush ends up just keeping his spot, whereas Moicano might go down a little bit, but not much to say about that in terms of where they go next. The next fight on the card, and this is a pretty big win for Peyton Talbott. He came back. Obviously he had a tough fight in January against Barcelos, but he showed a mountain of improvement in terms of his ability to not only grapple and get to grappling exchanges and find success, but also take kind of ownership of those exchanges and be the better grappler, if you will. In my opinion, I think he really did a great job at, not only just landing his shots on the feet, but staying fluid on the ground and getting top position or getting ownership of these grappling exchanges against a very well-seasoned grappler in Felipe Lima. Ultimately, I think Peyton Talbott went out there, and if you look at my pick tracker videos, which I'll be releasing my new one tomorrow, guys, Peyton Talbott absolutely destroyed in that fight compared to what I think a lot of us expected. So very good win for Peyton Talbott. He's back in the win column, and now I think we could be looking at him getting a potential shot against a ranked opponent at bantamweight. The next fight on the card, we've got Jack Hermansson versus Gregory Rodrigues. This is a sad fight, guys. I think Jack Hermansson looked great at first, but Rodrigues is able to unleash a brutal RoboCop KO. He lands that lead hook right on the chin of Jack Hermansson, sends him to the canvas, gives him a couple, I guess, super necessary hammer fists, as Jorge Masvidal would say, and gets that round 1 knockout in brutal fashion against Jack Hermansson. Jack Hermansson did look great throughout this fight as long as it lasted. It was only a few minutes, but I think he was mixing things up on the feet and keeping Gregory Rodrigues guessing. It was very nice, though, to see, because RoboCop had trouble in his last fight against Cannonier, he definitely made a huge adjustment in his patience and waiting for the right moment. Because obviously against Cannonier, he had great success at first, but he was able, after throwing some KO shots to get the finish on Cannonier, he gassed himself out and ultimately became susceptible to the damage that Cannonier was able to throw on him. So the patience from Gregory Rodrigues in this fight, I think, showed. He found that kill shot. He got it, and that's all she wrote. A huge, huge win for him and a sad KO loss for Jack Hermansson. Hopefully he recovers well. The next fight on the card, we got Haider Emil versus Jose Miguel Delgado. This was a very, very quick fight, guys. Jose Miguel Delgado goes out there. He does his typical exchange where he finds those knees in the clinch. This guy is an amazing striker in the clinch, especially with those dirty knees he's able to throw. He gets Haider Emil in the tie, throws that knee up the middle, catches him on the chin, which sends him straight to the canvas. Watching this fight, guys, this was not an early stoppage. That knee hit his chin with the utmost force and sent him, packing to the canvas. The guy was unconscious on the way down. He got woken up by the additional shots, which we've seen happen in so many fights. Haider Emil was absolutely KO'd, and this fight was stopped reasonably, and honestly, you could argue that maybe it could have gotten stopped before a couple ground shots landed. But regardless, Jose Miguel Delgado makes a huge statement win against a 35-year-old undefeated, I guess, marauder of this division, just landing that KO shot that sends him to the canvas. So a great win for Jose Miguel Delgado. And now Haider Emil is officially no longer an undefeated fighter in the UFC or in his pro career. The next fight on the card, we have Viviane Araujo versus Tracy Cortez. So this fight, guys, I think Tracy Cortez really owned from start to finish. Taking a look at some of the strikes and things of that nature, I mean, you've got 3 takedowns on the side of Tracy Cortez. Viviane Araujo did a good job being scrappy in the grappling, getting Tracy's back in a few moments, but Tracy was able to not only kind of minimize the threat there from Viviane Araujo, but she was also able to seize control over some of those grappling situations that occurred against the cage. At one moment, I think Viviane had her back and Tracy was able to reach her right arm over and get her own, basically negate the back take from Viviane Araujo and then take control. And then on the ground, Tracy was looking great. She was actually throwing some very vicious ground and pound shots. You could tell she wanted to hurt Viviane. And what I find hilarious is Viviane is talking, bitching and moaning, in round 3 especially, about how Tracy's just basically plastered her to the canvas and she can do nothing. I don't know what she was bitching about, but if you're really sitting there talking shit about a fighter who's just basically big brothering you and beating the shit out of you, making you look like you don't belong there, maybe you don't belong there. You're 38 years old. Maybe you should retire. It's my opinion anyways. The next fight on the card, we've got Terrance McKinney versus Vyacheslav Borshev. This fight, I think, went the way that a lot of people expected it to. Obviously, Vyacheslav's a great veteran, and he's had some of the best UFC fights we've seen. Although his record wouldn't suggest that he's this great fighter, he does have an amazing striking ability, has put on some banger performances at the UFC. Now, against a Terrance McKinney, I just knew Terrance's wrestling and grappling was going to be too much for Vyacheslav. And what do we see right off the bat? Terrance takes him down with a double leg. He gets him into, it looked like an anaconda choke. I think it was really more so, it was like a guillotine. He just didn't have the right angle. And finally, he gets that mounted angle. You got Vyacheslav on his bike. He's throwing the legs. He's trying to get the blood flow to the brain. And suddenly, Terrance makes him slap him on the ass and tap. So huge win for Terrance McKinney. I really hate to see when fighters have to do the little tap on the ass of the guy. That shit sucks because it's just the worst position probably to be in. You can't breathe and you're tapping a dude's ass to get out. Great win for Terrance McKinney. We'll have to see where he goes next, but he is putting together a bit of a win streak here in the lightweight division. The next fight on the card, and this was the second fight of the night, we have a very scrappy bout with Nico Price and Jacoby Smith. Jacoby Smith is able to latch up a very secure guillotine or rear naked choke technique. I really like to see, even though at the moment he looked like he might be a bit gassed and a bit weathered from the storm that Nico Price is kind of, keeping him in. And he's able to somehow latch that back up, even being tired. But he only had a brief moment. He latches up that rear naked choke, and he taps Nico Price out with it. It was a very solid technique that he had there. Now, I want to say immediately off the rip, Jacoby Smith, the combos that he landed in round 1 looked so slick. His ability to throw the overhand, come around with the body shot, he looked really smooth on the feet. But as most might expect, we've seen this happen even with a Bo Nickel. He kind of gassed out. He blew his wad after round 1, it seemed, and was not having that success on the feet anymore. And actually at times I thought Nico Price could potentially get the win here, guys. Nico Price showed he's a scrappy vet. I think one thing that Nico doesn't get enough credit for, he is a violent motherfucker, man. That guy on the ground, when he was throwing hammer fists on the ground from his back position, he's got his full guard, and he is just landing these heavy hammer fists on Jacoby Smith. He's also landing a lot of slicing elbows on Jacoby. Nico Price is not a guy that is just some bitch. He's going to make you take that win from him. And I really respect his fighting style, although, he has had some bad losses. He looked great and gave Jacoby Smith what I think every rising prospect needs is a grizzled vet who has kind of been in there, and get past round one. And I think what we were able to see now from Jacoby is that he did weather a bit of that damage and storm and found a way to win. And what I really am shocked about is, although being as tired as he was still able to notice that fight IQ and have that ability to latch up that rear naked choke in round two with a perfect technique and get Nico Price out of there. So great win for Jacoby. I think he still needs a few lesser name wins, if you will, in this division before he gets someone ranked, because he is fighting in welterweight. And if we watch that performance, I feel like Jacoby might not be ready for the likes of like a Carlos Prates or a Michael Morales. Like, I think he's got to get a couple more unranked wins maybe and continue to show some improvement in those skills. And then I think he might be ready for one of these guys in the top 15. Finally, the first fight of the card, which was a heavyweight scrap between Johanna Diniz and Alvin Hines. This fight actually was a really solid fight for heavyweight. I am very impressed by Alvin Hines. I thought that although Diniz definitely should have got that decision unanimously, I had picked him to win. Alvin Hines was an absolute dog out there, guys. Got busted up in round one, but was able to stay in there. And it almost seemed as though that as the fight went on, he continued to get more gas in his tank as compared to Diniz, who seemed to kind of gas out. It was like Alvin Hines had some type of fucking, I don't even know, like one of those fucking spells from Oblivion or Skyrim where he's like taking this dude's magicka, right? He's just fucking taking gas from Diniz and still landing shots. Like, especially in round three, I thought there were moments where Hines was having success in a way where it's like, shit, if Diniz doesn't get the fuck out of these exchanges, he might get caught and KO'd. I was very impressed with Alvin Hines, although he did lose this fight. I think that he is going to be a fun fighter to see in heavyweight because he seems like he has a bit of a better body shape and body type. And also the fact that he has some technique in his shots. He does get caught, but he has an ability to string together some like nice fancy combinations. He can be fast at times, pretty explosive. It'll be fun to see him get in there and scrap with some of the other heavyweights who seem to be a bit more plotty. I think that Alvin Hines, obviously, him and Diniz are both a bit plotty, but Alvin Hines did a great job in my opinion, although he did lose. Diniz did get the win, and I give him a lot of respect because he did get caught a few times, and I think he just wanted to have that ability to, win in these exchanges that he was winning in and ultimately ride it out to a decision. Overall, it's a great win, and it was a fun fight at heavyweight. So great time to watch for UFC 317. I feel like, guys, this ended up being a fantastic card. A lot of things happened that, from a pick perspective, I got a lot right. I think I went 8-3 on this card. Like I said, follow my tracker videos. You'll see what what those final scores were for each creator, including myself. But ultimately, what a fantastic card. And I'm just going to end this with, I really hope Charles has a good recovery. It was very exciting to see this knockout, but it was fucking awful to see this knockout happen to Charles. And like, to see Charles looking off into the distance, guys, that was sad. I got to say, like, I did not want to see Charles go out that way, but it is what it is. I'm hoping that Charles, even though 35, hoping he can still get a couple more fun fights in this career of his. But I don't know if he's going to be able to climb back up to the title. I'm not going to ever count Charles do Bronx out because that guy can really do anything he wants. But when you look at the level of skill Ilia has, it's hard to imagine anyone beating Ilia Topuria. I do think that Islam Makhachev has a great opportunity and chance against Ilia, and I'm not even sure. I think I would lean Ilia in that fight, but I'm not entirely sure if that's what happens because Islam is very defensively sound and has an amazing grappling game as well, plus a bit of a size advantage. So I think that's the biggest fight you can make. I do like to see a Paddy versus Ilia as well, but I think that that'll be a video I can make where I just talk about what matchup should be next. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give this a like and subscribe to Fight Feeds so you could stay on top of all the new content that I will be posting. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.